Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing this is why your ex is taking so long to reach out. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing this is why your ex is taking so long to reach out. So if you've been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, it can feel like forever before they reach out to you. In some instances, they sadly never will. But why is this? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 reasons why your ex is taking so long to reach out. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is missing you takes time. So if we consider the situation you find yourself in right now, you are a dumpee and you have an ex who is the dumper, and they ended the relationship. And they ended your relationship because they lost romantic emotional attraction for you. Now, this could have been for various potential reasons. Once upon a time, they were very much in love with you. Sadly, right now, that attraction level has dropped to the point where they action the breakup. And at this moment in time, they want to focus on moving forward on their own path. They want to experience life in a different direction. They believe there is more opportunity for them to feel satisfied and fulfilled away from your relationship. Now, this probably isn't very easy for you to listen to, but it is the reality. But the good news is things can change. As I was saying a moment ago, once upon a time, your now ex-dumper loved you. They were very much in love with you. They probably said to you, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So the fact that this sadly changed and evolved to a position we're seeing right now showcases change is possible, and change can happen again in the future for them being in this position right now where they don't feel in love with you, to move into a point where they can fall in love with you again. But to get to that stage, they need to miss you. Because if they don't miss you, they're not going to want to experience life with you again. Remember, they've made the decision to end the relationship. Remember, they made the decision because they lost romantic emotional attraction. Right now, they're not feeling enough attraction to be in that connection with you. Now, this isn't just physical attraction necessarily, although it could be. It could be a part of it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it is the only element of it. When I say romantic emotional attraction, this is everything combined. Mind, body, spirit, all combined to how somebody feels about someone else. And right now, their level of attraction towards you is not strong enough. You need them, from your position as a dumpee, to miss you. If they don't miss you, then they're not going to want to get back into a relationship with you. And one of the challenges you have as a dumpee, as you look at your clock and think, gosh, it's been such a long time since I heard from my ex, you've got to recognise that missing you takes time. They're not going to miss you if they haven't spoke to you in a few hours. They're not going to miss you if they haven't spoke to you in a few days. They're not going to miss you if they haven't spoke to you in a few weeks. From what I have seen, the average amount of time that a dumper misses a dumpee is around 6 months. That is ordinarily around the average amount of time that I see that a dumper regrows romantic emotional attraction for their former partner and wants to reach out, i.e. this is when they get into the stage when they're missing their ex. So when you're wondering why it's taking so long, when you're wondering why you can't get your ex back tomorrow, you must understand it's because right now they don't miss you. Now, I'm not saying they don't miss you in any way at all, but I'm saying they don't miss you in a romantic sense. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I miss them. I miss them more than anything. So why don't they miss me? Well, you've got to recognise that you've been dumped. Your position is that you have been rejected, and there is nothing more attractive than rejection. What you are feeling right now is not what they are feeling. Yes, you are apart, but recognise the fact that they made the decision. They made a choice. They were not feeling the relationship was working for them. You potentially didn't feel it was working that great either. But whether you did or you didn't, you were dumped, unfortunately. That means you were rejected. That means you are feeling these feelings that I've just mentioned, which is there is nothing more attractive than rejection. If somebody rejects us, we want it twice as more, 10 times as more, 100 times as more. This hasn't happened to your ex-dumper. So they're going to take time for them to recognize the fact that they were better with you than without you. This isn't something that they're going to come to a conclusion of in hours, days, or weeks. If they do come to this conclusion, it's likely to be months. And this is why we have to understand as a dumpee that patience is key. You might be thinking, well, I've heard of a friend or family member, or maybe even yourself, that you got back together with a previous ex much sooner. And that's because nothing can be guaranteed. You know, when I say the average amount of time is 6 months, that is the average. That means that some people get back together within a few weeks, although they are the exception to the rule. And some people get back together after a couple of years, and they are the exception to the rule on the other side of things. We're looking at the average amount of time. So when you're trying to get your ex back, when you're thinking, I want them back now, and you were dumped 2 months ago, you've got to recognise that you're nowhere near the average amount of time that it takes most dumpers to reflect and miss their ex. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is exploring life takes time. So in point number 1, we was referencing the fact that your ex-dumper needs time to tick by for them to miss you. They need to get to the point where they self-reflect and recognise that they are missing you from being part of their life in a romantic sense. But there are other elements to do with this which connect. And one of the other elements is that they need to explore life. Remember what I said earlier, that they, as a dumper, made a decision to end the relationship and they wanted to go on their own path. They believed they would be more satisfied and fulfilled going on their own journey. Well, this is something that they need to do, because if they don't go on this journey, if they don't go down their own path, if they don't explore life, then they can never get to that point of missing you, because they will always be wondering. They will always be wondering, is the grass greener? They will always be wondering, what is it like to do this, that, or the other? Now, this doesn't necessarily mean dating lots of other people. When people hear the term grass is greener, they automatically think but we're referencing dating other people. This is not necessarily the case. Sometimes people believe the grass is greener on the other side because it enables them to maybe see their friends more. It enables them to maybe go travelling. It enables them to maybe do hobbies or interests that they couldn't do within the relationship, either because the dumpee didn't like them doing this, they didn't like them spending time with these other people, they didn't like the thought of them going around the world travelling, or alternatively, maybe their ex-dumpee didn't mind, but it just wouldn't work out that way. It wasn't fair. Within a relationship, the person who was to become the dumper didn't feel that they could travel around the world, even though they really wanted to, because their dumpee had no interest, and they didn't feel they could do this fairly within the connection. So maybe that is why they ended the relationship. Or even if that wasn't the actual reason they ended it, this is something now that they want to explore. And this is why it is another reason as why it takes so long for your ex to potentially reach out to you. And that's because they need to explore life. And exploring life takes time. Using the travelling analogy, maybe your ex-dumper has started to travel and they've gone away for a number of months or a year. Now, if this is the case, they're not going to be reaching out to you in a romantic sense until they've come back. Now, I'm not here to say to you that you've got to wait for them. Not at all. You as a dumpee need to live your life to the full. You need to do your thing. You need to explore your goals, aspirations and dreams. But what I am saying is that your ex-dumper needs to go through their elements before they're going to be likely ready to self-reflect and even get to the point of where they might miss you romantically. They need to do what they need to do. Now, whether or not you wait for them, that is your choice. I don't suggest you do. Now, if coincidentally, by the time they get to the point of self-reflection, by the point of when they do reach out to you, if you are also still free and single, then that is wonderful. But it shouldn't be because you've been waiting for them. If nothing else, it's because we can't guarantee they will ever get to that stage. As I said at the very beginning of today's podcast, sadly, some dumpers will never reach out to their dumpees. Sadly, some dumpers will never regrow enough romantic emotional attraction. Sadly, some dumpers will never get to a point of missing their dumpee in a romantic sense. It doesn't mean that they don't miss them in other ways, but maybe not romantically. We have to recognise this as a possibility, and therefore, as a dumpee, you need to live your life to the full. You need to be doing your thing. You can't wait around and you can't clock watch. But what we need to understand from point number 2 is that exploring life takes time, and this is one of the reasons why a dumper is taking quote-unquote so long to reach out to you. Now, if you would like advice and support on how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more details about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about this is why your ex is taking so long to reach out. And point number 3 is dumpee growth takes time. Now, this is something that is really landing on you. It's something that you need to be focusing on if you want to try to get your ex back. And the reason I say this is because this is about the dumpee. This is about you. This is something you have control over. And as a dumpee, one of the worst aspects is that you have very little control over the situation. We can only control the controllables. And this is something that you can control. You have to understand that when you were dumped, the version of you which were dumped is unfortunately unlikely to be somebody who the dumper now believes is a good match. Now, this doesn't mean you weren't a good match before. It doesn't mean your relationship was false. Absolutely not. It's very likely to have been a truthful, genuine, loving relationship. But everybody grows, everybody evolves, and potentially you were growing apart. Potentially your ex was growing in one direction and you were growing in another, if you were growing at all. Sometimes we become complacent. Sometimes we stagnate. Whatever the situation, the version of you which was dumped, unfortunately, is unlikely to be the type of person that your ex-dumper will want to reconnect with. Yes, they are likely to miss you over time. Yes, they are likely to wonder about you and potentially reach out to you. But if your ex-dumper does reach out and they discover that in the potential months or years since you last spoke and were connected, if nothing has changed or evolved within you, then what is going to be the advantage of trying to reconnect? The dumper will likely think, well, I've been doing my own thing, I feel I've grown, I feel I'm a bit of a different person now, but my dumpy's just stood still. Now that is not an attractive position. And if you are a dumpy, if you want to get your ex back, you need to grow. You need to be a better person today than you were yesterday, and a better person tomorrow than you are currently today. You need to be a better person than your ex-dumper remembers, because if and when they reach out to you, they need to feel a wow factor. They've been pulled into you via potentially you implementing my version of the no contact rule, which is something I strongly suggest you implement if you've been dumped. But if and when this has worked to the stage where your ex-dumper has reached out to you, this is unlikely to necessarily be enough. They've reached out to you because they're wondering about you and they're missing you somewhat, but they need to see and feel a wow factor by how you have evolved. Now, this doesn't mean you've got to be completely different. The core of you is likely to be a great person that they still love all the way through from a breakup, during, and now. But it is almost the cherry on top of the cake, the icing on the cake, the extra elements which make people feel that spark. What have you been doing with your life? Have you been focusing on your health and fitness? Do you now feel that you're healthier, fitter, and therefore more physically attractive? Are you somebody who's been educating yourself and feel more knowledgeable? Maybe you feel that you can try and obtain a job which previously you were unable to do. Have you been moving up the ladder within your place of work? Are you considering starting your own business? Maybe you're doing something creative. You're learning something new, which you always wanted to, but didn't before. Maybe you used to tell your dumper, I want to learn this, that, or the other, but you never had the time, or you couldn't be bothered, but now you have. Whatever it may be, and this could be something that via my audio coaching sessions, we can figure out, depending on your unique circumstances, of things you can do to become that version 2.0 of yourself. Whatever it is you do and become, If and when your ex reaches out to you, if they feel that wow factor, then this is likely to pull them closer towards you and a reconnection can take place. However, when we consider why it's taken so long for your dumper to reach out, it is often because they realise and recognise, if not subconsciously, that dumpy growth will take a long time. They probably realise that you're not likely to change anytime soon, and the changes they really hope you evolve into, they know are going to take a while, and therefore that is why they might not be reaching out to you anytime soon, because they need to believe there's been enough time pass for these changes to potentially be seen. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.